Hello and welcome to July's episode of All Things Business, the podcast, where I speak with our guests about all things creative marketing. I ask our guests what campaign they've admired throughout their careers, some of their biggest marketing mistakes, as well as what advice they'd give to anyone working on their own creative marketing campaigns. So thank you both for joining us. To begin, can we just start by introducing ourselves? We'll start with Martin.
Yeah, sure. I'm Martin Carmody, Managing Director of Stratos Creative. So it's a recent appointment. It's very new. Obviously, in the July edition of All Things Business, you can read more. However, over the past sort of year, I've been consulting as a brand consultant, working with various different agencies, teams, brands, businesses in Milton Keynes predominantly, but further afield as well. And yeah, being able to kind of reflect on kind of my experience and knowledge and work to date, it gave me the opportunity to look at new opportunities, and thankfully, we found something that definitely supports where I want to be going in my next sort of path, my chapter, but also, support the guys in their next wave of agency growth.
Fantastic. So congratulations on your new appointment.
Thank you very much.
It's all right. Rebecca?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rebecca Covington. I'm a newly appointed marketing manager for Woodfines Solicitors. We are a full-service legal firm. We're based in Milton Keynes and Bedford and Cambridge. So, as I said, a fairly new role, although I've been in sort of professional services marketing for about 20 years now.
Fantastic. Brilliant. So I'm going to start off with a nice easy one, or at least I think it's an easy one. So is there a brand or campaign that you really admire?
Yeah, combining the two, and there's lots of, people probably mention Apple and Nike and big brands like that. However, I'd like to mention Specsavers. And the reason for that is the longevity of their brand, their proposition. They're very clear and concise on who they want to talk to. They haven't changed that too much. I think, they've had the campaign of... have you gone to Specsavers for nearly 2 decades now? They've reinvented it a few times. I think the simplicity of the way they execute their creative and their campaigns is very respected, and it's essentially become a bit of a household name because of that. The other thing is their out-of-home approach to things, billboards, not just on social, but actually taking a holistic view of their marketing as well. Simplicity is at the core of everything they do, and that's the clever part, really. So yeah, for me, a brand like Specsavers to be still on the retail high street market, through COVID as well, that's a real sort of testament of the strength of their brand.
I would definitely agree with that. I think, was it Specsavers that did the billboard that they'd made to look like it was come crashing down? It was like, should have gone to Specsavers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the clever part. They're pulling on the rationale and the reasons why people would shop at Specsavers, and those fundamental pain points that people have. So it's just a clever way of kind of tuning it all back into their brand. So yeah, that's why I mentioned Specsavers.
Brilliant. And Rebecca?
Well, I've got a couple.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely.
I suppose the sensible one, which is Deloitte's accountancy. I love their branding. It's really simple. They use their green dot a lot. So anytime you see any kind of advertising from them, instantly it's Deloitte's. I also think the way that as a professional services firm, they've embraced social media is really good, because they use it predominantly, or it appears to be predominantly, for their recruitment. And they've got a massive sort of recruitment for women drive going on at the moment, which is going across various social channels. And again, whenever you see those adverts come up in your feed, they're instantly recognisable and done in a very, what I would call, very sort of brand and classy sort of way. They're a huge firm, so most people have heard of them. So I like the way that they're using various channels to sort of promote other things that they're doing. So their recruitment, their CSR, their ESG sort of philosophies and ideas. And then the fun one, I suppose, not saying Deloitte's aren't fun, I was thinking about campaigns that have always sort of stuck with me. And it's a really old one, Guinness. I don't know if you remember the Surfer advert with the horses coming and the music was really emotive. And I think that's the first time that I've sort of seen a campaign and thought, yeah, I want to try that. I mean, this is Guinness. This is a brand that really needed uplifting. And I thought that was just a brilliant way of putting it together and making me want to try a drink that I have to say I'm not really very keen on. But people were drinking it. They were moved by it. And I think they've always been very clever with their advertising. I haven't seen much to date. You may correct me on that one, but there's nothing that's stuck with me recently that they've done.
You know, there are still campaigns out there. There's a lot lighter touch, but I think through COVID, there's been a lot of brands that have kind of paused and stopped and regrouped and reflected on kind of what they've done in the past, but now what they should be doing in the future. But yeah, it's Guinness is an interesting one because you know, I kind of look around some of the establishments that, you know, we visit at weekends, and actually it's quite a predominant brand still. It's still there.
They made it fashionable.
It's back. It's fashionable.
It had a really
again.
They did make it fashionable.
It's definitely a more fashionable brand, and you do see, you know, the younger audience purchasing it, which, exactly. Years ago, it used to be very much a slightly elder proposition, I suppose.
And also, I always liked the way, I believe I suspect it's Kellogg's Coco Pops did this as well, where you turn something that could be perceived as a slight negative and putting it into a positive. In the case of Guinness, you know, they did a lot of campaigns with you have to wait for it. And, you know, normally that probably be quite annoying, but they sort of use that as a positive. Again, a sort of a quality message, you know, it's good to wait for something. It's worth the wait. I think was actually one of their taglines at one point. And with the Coco Pops, I remember as a child thinking it's really annoying that the milk goes brown, but then they turned it into, well, it's chocolatey milk. Yeah. You know, and I always think that there is some marketing person somewhere saying, well, how can we turn this into something positive and make it, a really nice message? And I like that. I always think that's very clever.
That sort of dwell time on a brand, you know, you mentioned Guinness and the pour and, you know, the settlement of the head and, you know, that experience. But, you know, the other one is Apple. You know, when you open an Apple product, you know, there's that dwell time on the box vacuum opening and, you know, it's all there. It's all considered. It's there for a purpose. It's anticipation. It's anticipation. It's pent up excitement. But when you get there, it's going to be quite special.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So you've kind of mentioned B2C and B2B brands there, I noticed. Do you think it's more difficult as a B2B marketer to create these noticeable campaigns, these campaigns people remember? Because when you do kind of quickly try and think of them on the top of your head, I would assume it's mostly B2C that comes to mind. Things like your Coco Pops and your Guinness and so on and so forth. Do you think it's more difficult as a B2B campaign?
There is opportunity to be creative. Depends on, I mean, I work in-house, so it depends on how receptive your sort of managing directors are for, you know, sort of creativity. There's obviously the audience is slightly different as well, so you can't go too crazy with the creativity, but I have had fun in the past with thinking slightly differently in how we market ourselves and how we position ourselves. As one example, I worked for a property firm many years ago, and we were doing an exhibition, and it was a case of, well, what can we do that's going to be a little bit different here? And it was for an industrial shed show. It was called the Shed Show many years ago. So we basically built the inside of a shed and made it into a bar as well, with sort of pallets, and that was really good fun working on that and sort of bringing it to life and just thinking that a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think there's definitely creativity in B2B opportunities. You know, I'm just trying to wrap my brains as to a good example. I've done quite a lot of work in the coffee world. So, coffee roasters selling direct to supermarkets, wholesalers, contract caterers. How do you position it? How do you stand out from the crowd? I think there's quite a crowded market, and obviously having a product you're selling to a business, it needs to step slightly aside or slightly different, or take a slightly different approach to the next one. But there's definitely opportunity. I think speaking specifically to a core demographic is obviously the key there, and making sure that whichever business it is, or whatever business wants to attract a certain demographic or audience, that it's really getting to them and it's really clear and concise messaging. But yeah, I think there's probably bigger creative opportunities with B2C, but there's definitely more just as much with B2B, just a slightly different approach.
So if you can find the creative aspect of it, then you've got the potential to create something special.
You can do. And again, it wasn't me that came up with this idea. I really wish we did. I had rather. Again, at the property firm, we, on the residential side, we sent everybody socks. And they were just simple red socks. And to this day, if I mention the firm that I worked for, people still say, "Oh yeah, the socks. You sent those." And I might be reusing that.
Don't blame you if it works. If it broke, don't fix it.
It is. So again, opportunity just to be that little bit more creative. It's fun.
I think there's definitely, in certain sectors, there's preconceived ideas of what you're going to see and how you're going to receive it and what you might do with it. But exactly that kind of tactic, where you can kind of turn somebody's head by doing something slightly different and, oh, okay, didn't realise you would take this approach to your marketing. That's the key thing and where it becomes clever.
The Medigold Health Group is one of the UK's most trusted occupational health and wellbeing providers, helping businesses to keep their people in work safe and well for over 2 decades. Delivering services including absence management, employee screening and mental health and wellbeing programs to more than 2,500 clients, looking after 3 million individual employees. Twice winners of the Big Business of the Year award at the Northamptonshire Business Excellence Awards, Medigold Health are redefining corporate healthcare through their commitment to clinical quality and technological innovation, and supporting businesses of all sizes to succeed in achieving their workplace wellbeing goals. Do either of you ever take inspiration from competitors' marketing? And this is going to,
all the time.
Why not?
Yes.
I think insight research, what's working, what's not working, who's doing what where, it's really, really important. We're never going to kind of admit we're going to be copying things, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to creatively think, and we're here to kind of make a difference to whatever business we're working with. But certainly, we should absorb as much as we can. And that comes from a creative side as well. Even if it's travelling on the tube to London and you see different adverts on the tube, or billboards at the stations, all of that creative insight that you can receive just from being in and around other things is really, really important to the thinking that you do for your clients.
It all sort of it assists, it aids what you're doing. I'm always looking at what other people are doing and quite often saying that's nice. Yeah, I like that. I like the way that they've upped their game, and it sort of pushes you to think, right, now we need to be thinking more along these lines or doing something a little bit differently. And I mean, there's the reverse is looking at some things thinking, that's not quite hit the mark there. I can see where they're trying to go, but I think they've lost sight of their particular message. That's really important, sort of keeping sight of what you're actually trying to achieve and the messages, and then drawing inspiration from other people. If something is done, a beautiful piece of design, quite often I look at a sort of bit of packaging or something, or a folder that somebody's got for me from a competitor, and that's tactile. I think, oh, this is lovely. And sort of draw inspiration from it rather than sitting there thinking, wish I thought of it.
Yeah, and for me, it's about recognising that talent as well. Long have gone the days of being really quite negative about others for no reason. I think we need to embrace people's creativity, and I think we should take that those things we see and those things we hear and the way they deliver it and take them on board. And I just don't think that there's room anymore to have a big ego about this. I think it's about really recognising people's talent and taking that on into other areas that you may be working in.
Interesting. So it's kind of saying there about how things have moved on. I would say in marketing as well, over the last 10, 20 years, things have changed entirely. And one of those things is the fact you've got your digital marketing where everything is right in front of you as soon as it happens, breaking news. That being said, how far in advance should people plan their marketing, bearing in mind you have to consider your proactive marketing and your reactive marketing nowadays? Again,
it all depends on the business, all depends on the capacity, all depends on the setup and budget. However, ideally we would like to be planning quarterly. And what the way to do it that I think is most efficient is to plan quarterly. The standard stuff, I call it. So the stuff that we know that's coming up. We know that there's going to be a certain day in the year, or there's a certain thing going on in the business, or there's a certain bit of recognition for it within the industry. But then there does need to be that reactive piece as well, and drip feed that and have someone on the ground to be able to manage that. I think that's the key thing. And in my experience, there's a lot of businesses that don't have that on tap, should we say. So I think it's pivotal that there's a mix. Where there's a scheduled plan, a strategic scheduled plan based on objectives of the business, but then there is very much a reactive piece as well, and it needs to be the right reactive, and again set by a strategic objective. But I'd say a mix of the both. But ideally, you'd want to be planning a few months ahead. Otherwise, you'll always be kind of shooting from the hip, and you have to have that thinking time when you're marketing a business.
Very similar. The strategic marketing plan has to obviously enhance and complement the business strategy. So the main elements or the key services that perhaps you're going to be focusing on for the next year, I would say you need a good 6 months to a year to sort of implement any particular plan. But then, of course, we do also have to be reactive, and reactive in a way that I think you've said this as well, that sort of sticks to key messages and keeps it focused. So you avoid a sort of scattergun approach of, that looks good, let's do that. And I'm really against that kind of approach. Just keep sort of methodical, have a plan, and if an opportunity arises and it's actually fitting with what you're trying to do, then react. But again, you sort of said it's sort of key to that is having people on the ground that can react that quickly, because you're usually so bogged down in doing, say, the broader picture stuff. It is nice to then have a team to sort of say, right, pick that up and run with it.
So do you think sometimes the ability to do that can depend on resource?
Absolutely, yes. Otherwise you do miss opportunities if you don't have proper resourcing.
And it can be really damaging doing the wrong things at the wrong time.
I was about to say that. Do you think sometimes reactive marketing can be a risky chance to take?
Yeah, as we've just discussed, I think there needs to be an overarching strategic marketing goal, objective, plan. If anything outside of that doesn't resonate with the core objectives of that plan, it needs to be questioned and it needs to be managed properly. And the last thing you want to be doing is, as I said earlier, shooting from the hip and just kind of jumping on the bandwagon because it's there. There needs to be a purpose behind everything you're doing as a brand.
Or because your competitor's doing it. Someone is coming to you saying, well, they're doing it, why aren't we there? Well, because it's not fitting what our plan is or focus is for the next year. So we will consider it. And if it sits alongside the plan for the future, then yes, we'll explore that. It's being sort of systematic about it and taking not careful, because you do have to be reactive as well, but a considered approach with your marketing.
Okay, on the topic of taking chances, what would you say the biggest marketing mistake you've ever made is?
My biggest marketing mistake was down to data. So having a startup business in 2012, I didn't appreciate how important marketing data was for the growth of my business. So we used to market ourselves, and we used to do quite a bit, whether it was from a CSR point of view, or whether it was within the culture of the business, whether it was promoting the client work we did, whatever it might have been. But we didn't have the resource or capability in-house to measure and analyse that data. So that is from a inside-out perspective. That's from within my own business. These days, there's a lot of opportunity now to capture a lot more data, and they're analysing it and making sure, again, if you've got the capacity and the people to do that's when it becomes really, really powerful. But I think the thing for me is that informative information to make sure what you're doing is going to hit the mark, it's hitting a mark, or which way can we change or twist or turn to make sure it does hit the mark. And I think those things can be analysed if you've got really solid and robust data.
Mine was a proofing incident where it was a campaign to promote a payroll service, and we were sending out this shows again how long ago this was, pay slips. Well, they looked like pay slips. So the idea was that they were going to go through people's doors and, oh, okay, this is nice. And it's a simple thing. There was a spelling mistake on it. And it wasn't until one of the ladies were doing the franking that they noticed it. I was like, oh my God. So so we had it reprinted and resent, and the boxes of wasted card basically sat under my desk as a footrest for quite a while, because I just didn't have the heart to sort of throw them away. It felt awful. But yeah, that was a definite heart-sinking moment, one not to be repeated. So I proof again now.
It's always good to learn from mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. And I get anybody who's walking by, check this now, just to make sure.
Lovely. So for anyone listening to this that's about to embark on their first campaign, what advice would you give to them?
Plan properly. So reflect on your business, the core objectives of the business, the overarching strategy of the business. Then position the brand in the right place. Make sure you understand your audience, your target market, and that's driven by the people that you're trying to talk to rather than the owners of the business. Again, in my experience, some businesses sometimes approach things because they think they need to approach it that way. So actually listening to consumers and taking focus group information and really sort of becoming entrenched in actually what the end consumer needs rather than what the business needs is really, really important. And then planning a strategic marketing plan around that. And as we've kind of already talked about, making sure there is a robust plan. You've got the people in the business to deliver it, or an agency, and stick to it. Analyze the data as you go along, and then adjust if you need to. But 9 times out of 10, if you've got your core objectives of your business and you know what you're talking about and how you want to articulate it and how you want to sound and how you want to look and feel, then you should hopefully be on quite a good path to success.
So keep it simple. Know your audience. Understand what you're trying to do, what messages you're trying to convey, and stick to it. And make sure that it's done well, and don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Basically, utilise the full marketing mix as well. I would definitely recommend.